Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video. My next guest needs no introduction. It's the legendary Jeff Lemire. If you watch my channel, you know he's one of my favorite comic book writers of all time. He's gotten to work on so many different comics. I'll be here all day if I listed them all. Recently, his comic Sweet 2 was adapted into a Netflix TV show, which you should go check out. Currently, he's doing Mazebook, Primordial, Black Hammer, Batman, and Robin. And he's also gotten to work on various other great series, Gideon Falls, Essex County, Fish Flies, Underwater Welder, The Descenders, Frog Catchers, Snow Angels, Ascenders again, After Death, Family Tree, Royal City, Plutona, and maybe just a billion more. But Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
No, it's no problem at all. I'm so excited to get into all your different comics. But like one of the things that kind of broke comics it was all over Twitter was that you signed an exclusive deal with Image Comics. Is this the first time that's kind of ever been done before, or has this happened before? Or
No, I think Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips have been exclusive at Image for a number of years. So I think they're kind of the ones that broke that mold and did that a while ago. It just came to a point where most of my work was coming out through Image anyway, except for the Black Hammer books, which are winding up. So it just seemed like a kind of a nice move to kind of just consolidate my efforts into one spot to make things a little easier for myself moving forward.
Yeah, but like being paid to do your own books is kind of the dream job for any, writer. And like you've signed exclusive deals before with both DC and Marvel, I think, at different points. Would it be correct?
Yeah, I've been exclusive at different points. Yeah, I mean, I came up doing indie comics, but then I worked at Vertigo with Sweet Tooth, and then started working at DC Comics for a number of years, and it was exclusive there for a long time. And then I was at Marvel for 2 or 3 years exclusive as well. And then I've kind of been a free agent for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6, 7 years. So it's hard to keep track of, but yeah, I've been sort of doing stuff all over the place for those.
Yeah, I assume it all just blurs after a while.
Yeah,
it's just like, did I write that? Do I have a new comic coming out this week? But yeah, no, we just touched on there. I guess 2022 is definitely going to be the year of Jeff Lemire. If 2021 wasn't already, it seems like, I assume by the end of this interview, you'll have a full graphic novel, maybe 200 pages just done. But yeah, so like, I know you have a few horror titles coming out. I think some are coming out this year, and it's all under like the Bone Orchard trilogy. And this is all like, this is a shared universe with your Gideon Falls universe. Am I correct in saying so?
It's not connected to Gideon Falls. It's a brand new thing. So it's
really? It's not the same world. It's a completely
new. Brand new. Yeah. So it's with my co-creator of Gideon Falls, Andrea Sorrentino, and I are doing these projects. So the idea was to create a number of separate projects, separate stories that all take place in the same sort of universe, and they're all sort of darker edge stories, horror. I guess you call them horror stories, thrillers, whatever. But yeah, they're not connected to Gideon Falls or Primordial. It's a brand new sort of mythology and universe that they'll all take place in. And some of them will be graphic novels, some will be comic book series, but they all kind of share the same mythology, which will kind of grow across the projects.
Yeah, and the one that comes out, I believe, maybe most in the like closer to the time that is now, is the Passageway. Is that comes out in June?
Yeah, that'll be the first one in May.
Yeah. Oh, it's May. Nice.
Yeah, I think it's May. It's a 80 page hardcover graphic novel. It's like a standalone story, kind of like a movie rather than a TV show. It just tells one really cool story and introduces readers to this sort of hints at the bigger mythology and things that we'll be playing off of later.
Yeah, and then there's a 10,000, Black Feathers. That's a limited. Am I correct in saying so?
Yeah, that's 5 issues, and that's the second one in September. And that one's all written, and it's pretty fun. We'll probably do 1 or 2 books a year in this mythology, in this world, and we kind of have the freedom to do them as a standalone graphic novel or a longer comic series, whatever the story best sort of dictates. We have the freedom to try different media, different formats, and it'd be a lot of fun. We love working together.
So typical of you to just build a superhero universe and then go, I'd like to build a horror universe. And it's like, so is writing horror something that's, I don't know, I guess, because you always seem to just kind of excel at something like that. And that's kind of what I've noticed, that horror, I've talked to a few horror comic book writers, and it always seems like it's harder to do in comics because already so much goes into it when it's, a film or TV show. So is it even harder, writing horror and comic and coming up with things, that maybe just make people feel unsettled?
Yeah, I think it probably is. I mean, the word horror and that genre is always kind of scares me a little bit. I don't, I
Yeah.
well, it scares me a little bit, but it's,
Yeah. No,
it
not
just,
horror.
I'm not a
That's just
huge
new comics.
fan of horror movies. I'm not
Oh,
really into horror. I don't read a lot of horror. Um, but I just sort of I do like to do darker stories. And if you want to call them horror stories, that's fine. I think, but they're not your traditional kind of horror stories with a monster and jump scares and things. They're a little more like really moody psychological kind of things. And you can do that kind of stuff, I think, quite well in comics if you have the right artist. And
yeah.
with Andrea, I do. So we really like to mess around with that and kind of try to go to some weird places and stuff. And it's a lot of fun. Yeah, but I mean, obviously with film and everything, I think sound design is a big part of horror films, and we don't have that, so we have to rely on what comics can do well, and like page turns and playing around with layouts and things that are inherent to this medium, and trying to find ways to make that scary or startling or sort of disturbing.
Yeah, I think I know a perfect comic book villain for you. I'll let you keep this. Someone called Tip Zdarsky. That's just something I just came up with almost immediately. But yeah, that'd be a great comic book villain. But yeah, you can have that one for free. You can call it Chip Zdarsky if you want, but I just came up with that on the spot. Yeah, that's
I'd rather not.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Chip Zdarsky just has to be in every comic book. I interviewed him once. One of his demands was that I bring him up in every single interview. He didn't actually, but I'm just going to do it. I didn't read the fine print, so now I'm legally contracted to do it. But yeah, everyone go check out Chip Zdarsky, I guess, whatever. But yeah, no, we just touched on there, And so the first time you worked with Andre, was that on Green Arrow? Or yeah, was it on Green Arrow that you guys first worked together?
Yeah, so I started working at DC probably 2010, and then in 2011 they did the New 52 stuff, and I was doing Animal Man, and then I was offered the Green Arrow title, and I knew if I was going to do that book, I wanted it to be sort of really different from what had come before, and go to more of a darker edge, sort of street level sort of take on that character. So I kind of looked around for an artist that would have sort of that moody style, and Andrea was doing a book called I, Vampire at the time.
Yes.
Which was about to be canceled, I think. So he was coming free, and I kind of pushed to get him on the book. There was a little pushback at the time from editorial because he wasn't really a superhero artist, but.
Oh, really?
But we got him on there, and then he and I just clicked immediately and started really playing off each other and sort of experimenting with layouts and storytelling. And so yeah, that was the first one. We did Green Arrow, and then we did Old Man Logan at Marvel. And then we did our own thing with Gideon Falls, which was very successful, and we really sort of cemented our collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, we're talking about all your ongoing series. Something you have right now is this from Image as well as Primordial, which I love how you can write, a horror book, about this black barn in the middle of nowhere. And then you write a comic, about a monkey and a dog that are sent up to space. And you still do a great job at that. But, how did Primordial even come about? Because believe it or not, I believe some of this is kind of based on, true stories that did kind of happen. Obviously, Yeah, but so it's
a weird one. It's sort of the first time I played around with real historical events a little bit with my. So yeah, I did take the actual historical events of the first animals sent into space, and then kind of did an alternate history where what would happen if, instead of unfortunately dying during these experiments or right after, they were kidnapped by a higher intelligence experiment. It turned it into a big science fiction kind of thing. So I honestly don't know where the idea from that one came from. I've been working on it for a couple of years, so
brilliant.
I don't remember where it came from, but I always sort of, I think we finished Gideon, and I wanted to do something other than horror just to get a break with Andrea. So we thought sci-fi would be cool, and I was just kind of looking for ways to do something different. And I thought having the main protagonists of the books not be people but be animals would be forced me to try some different storytelling and things, as we played around with that and came up with that story.
You just woke up in a cold sweat. It's like it has to be a monkey and a dog, and they're in space. It has
to be two monkeys and one dog, and
has to be.
Yeah.
And the editors were like, "Jeff, are you feeling okay?" You're like, "Don't talk to me. It's a good idea." You're in your room. It's all on the board somehow. I assume that's how most of your comics just come to you. You wake up in a cold sweat.
Well, it's a good thing. the good thing is I don't have to at Image. We don't really need to pitch anything to editors. We just can do whatever we want. So it saves that step of everyone not really believing in the project other than you. You can just kind of do it and and prove them wrong on your own.
And everyone's just sitting there. So did Jeff do, come back two monkeys and a dog? And it's like, yeah, it's fine. We'll just let him do it. And then it turns out to be something brilliant. But yeah, I was recently in a space museum and I saw that in the London Space Museum. I was on a holiday and I saw it and I was thinking that a monkey that was sent to space, that'd be a great idea for a story because there's one of that. And then, like, of course, a year later, Primordial comes out. So I assume, you essentially stole that from me. But just because it's such good comic, I'll let you keep it. But you came up, because I am generous like that. No, but you just said that, you kind of had to use new storytelling tactics. I don't know if that's a fair word to say. But did you find, or this may be a stupid question, was it any harder for you to write, like, for a dog and two monkeys as opposed as it would be for humans?
No, not really, because you obviously humanize them and you turn them into, they become sort of the emotional center of the book. So, because their intelligence has been enhanced in the story, that you can kind of write them like human characters, really. That's the fun of it. So it really wasn't that tricky. It was kind of tricky. They have to do certain things, physical things in the story that I guess you couldn't do without hands and thumbs, so it was kind of, we had to devise ways to create these spaceships and things that would work with their anatomy but that was fun. Those are kind of fun challenges to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so issue 5, would I be kind of saying, so it comes out sometime in the next week or two? Am I correct?
I have no idea.
Do you just not know anything anymore? It's like, yeah, one of them probably comes out. Maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Honestly, once I write them, I'm on to the next thing. So I'm always, oh yeah, that's coming out. Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. The last one must be coming out really soon.
Yeah, I think I was just checking on the Image website. Issue 5 comes out sometime January. Links for times or every new comic from Jeff, you can check out. I'll be in the description. But yeah, 6, I believe, comes out in February. But yeah, so you decided to make that a limited series?
Yeah, some of them, not everything's a 50 issue saga. It's some things are just like better with the beginning, middle, and end, and you tell a story and get out. And this felt like one of those. And then, some of the Bone Orchard stuff is going to be like that too, where they're very self-contained and they can be read alone. And so they're after doing Gideon Falls, which was quite a long series, I think doing these sort of shorter stories has been really kind of an interesting challenge, because in some ways it's harder to do those than the longer ones, where you can just sort of kind of push things down the line and figure them out later. So yeah, it's a bit more of a challenge, but they're fun to do, and I think they can be really satisfying reads.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you did 2 100-page full volumes of Primordial about two walking monkeys and then a space dog, it would have been brilliant. I absolutely would have picked it up. You thought I was going to say something else, you should have done that. But just because you're putting out such a great volume of books, I'll let it slide. But before we move on to Mazebook, which I want to touch on, let me circle back to the Image deal. How did this come about to you? I realized I never asked. How were you even contacted about this?
Well, I mean, I've just been working with Image for almost a decade now, doing Gideon Falls and Descender and all the other books. So it just came out of conversations with Eric Stevenson, the publisher. We were at some conventions together, and we're pretty good friends. So just discussing the possibility of what that would mean and what that could look like. And yeah, it just sort of came about casually. It wasn't something I was really seeking out, but it seemed to kind of work for where I'm at with my career right now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so will we be seeing, is it just horror comic you plan to do for the while, or will we see, some other genres and new ideas?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. No, I mean, this year, I guess we'll have the Bone Orchard books, which are horror books. And then I have a new book with Dustin Wen, who I did a Descender and Ascender with, called Little Monsters. And it's about child vampires, but it's not really a horror book. It's much more of a sci-fi book. Then I'm doing a book with Gabriel Walta this fall, which is very much sci-fi as well. And then I'm going to do some of my own stuff that I draw, which is all over the map usually. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a brilliant schedule. So yeah, everyone, if you're even more excited, you can go check that out. But yeah, so another book that you're currently working on, an issue just came out yesterday.
The last issue just came out.
Yeah, the last issue just came out yesterday.
Week, yeah.
So you do remember some of it, but some of it's
that one I remember. Yeah.
Some of it's just a blur. Wait, did I even write that comic? Oh yeah, I did. And it's just like, probably I bet you just don't remember you did like a 100-page graphic novel and you're like, yeah, that's me. But yeah, it's sort of Mazebook. What can you tell us about this series? Because this is under Dark Horse, who you've done a bit of work with in the past, but how did this series come about to you? Did you pitch it to them?
Yeah, What's that?
Did you pitch the Mazebook to them, or?
Well, I actually, it was a book that I just kind of did on my own, to be honest. I didn't have a publisher.
Yeah.
I just kind of took some time and sort of did it at my own pace and on my own, and I figured when it was done, I'd kind of figure out who I was going to publish it with. So I did the whole book a couple of years ago. And then when it was completed, yeah, I mean, I had been doing all the Black Hammer books at Dark Horse, and it just seemed like a good fit at the time to do that there, so that's where that came from. But yeah, the book itself was a real labor of love. I loved working on that project. It was a lot of fun to do. I don't know what you would define it as. It's definitely not sci-fi, it's not horror, it's not anything, but it's kind of all of those things. And yeah, it's a pretty strange story about this man looking for his lost daughter in a maze where he she used to love doing puzzles and mazes as a kid, and he found the last unfinished maze she was working on before she passed away, and he gets this dream or this idea to put the maze over the map of the city and follow it through the streets and alleys, and thinking he'll find her if he can. And as he does, he kind of enters another sort of metaphysical world and goes on this odyssey to find his lost daughter. And it's about memory and grief and kind of moving on with your life and all these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, on the channel, I'm known for hitting, just hard hitting questions, some real top gear journalism. How hard is it to draw these weird looking intricate mazes? And is that difficult for you at all?
It is difficult. I had to use some computer programs to help me with those, to be honest with you.
I don't blame you. You could just get your whole comic AI generated from now on. But yeah, so absolutely. And so was this book kind of well thought out? Because it seems like, it all kind of comes together, and it all just feels very well structured. So is this something you took your time with, the Mazebook?
Yeah, that's the joy of just doing it on your own pace without a publisher or a publishing date in mind. Is I took a year and a half or 2 years, and I really just took my time and let it develop slowly and naturally. And I would draw stuff, and sometimes I wouldn't be going in the right direction, and I'd stop and back up. And the freedom to do that kind of stuff was, usually you don't really get that once you start publishing a book on a schedule. You kind of have to meet the deadlines. So
yeah.
That's why the stuff I draw myself, I kind of have the luxury of doing it at my own pace and then figuring out the publishing schedule later. And it allows me the time to do that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Mazebook, everyone can go pick up issue 5, which just dropped in comic book stores yesterday. As of time of upload, it will be out, so you can all go pick it up, and I would highly recommend you do so. And you get to see Jeff struggling while drawing mazes, which is, what's more to love? That's why we read comics. But yeah, absolutely, the Mazebook. So you also did the art on this, not only writing. So for anyone who doesn't know, not only are you a writer, you're also an artist. But I think, so, with your upcoming work, are you, leaning more into the writing as opposed to the art, or what's that like, honestly?
No, I always I'm always drawing one book. That's sort of my passion. And then I write that other stuff on the side, so I keep a balance between usually one book of my own and 2 or 3 books that I'm drawing for other artists. That seems to be a good schedule for me. So it's fun to do both. I love the freedom and the sort of immersive quality of drawing everything yourself and really just falling into that world and working by yourself. But I also love being able to collaborate with people, like Andrea or Dustin, who we've developed these great relationships together and work so well together that it's really rewarding to collaborate with them too and do stuff that I couldn't do on my own. So I'm just kind of lucky I get to sort of do both of those things. Yeah, so, it would be really bad to choose one. Yeah,
absolutely. So you just brought up, working with Dustin, which you recently got to on Robin and Batman. Issue 3 just dropped yesterday. Like I said, you have about
everything's finishing this month, it seems. I don't know why that's happening, but yeah.
Exactly. Why couldn't you have just written 2 comics? This interview would be so much easier preparing for it, because you're like, yes, you got to do this and this. But I'll let it slide just because you're such a good writer. But yeah, so everything seems to be coming to an end at this one, especially Robin and Batman. So this is a 3 issues miniseries. And so, how did this come about? Because this has been such a fantastic series. I've really loved it. So how did this come about to you? Working.
Yeah, that one's been percolating for a while. I actually was something I pitched that story to DC maybe 5 or 6 years ago as something I wanted to draw myself for the Black Label imprint. And I don't really remember what happened. Either they weren't really into the idea, or I got busy with some other things as well, and it kind of just sort of didn't happen. But last year, when we were finishing Descender and Ascender, we thought, before we dive into the next creator-owned book, Dustin really loves drawing Batman. So I had
every artist dreams.
Yeah, we'll do this short story just as a kind of palette cleanser before we do our next create our own thing. And I had that idea that I pitched a couple of years ago, so I dusted it off and kind of restructured it a little bit to suit Dustin, and we pitched that. So we kind of just dove into it right after Descender, and did this 3-issue thing that's sort of it's kind of like a new take on the origin of the Dick Grayson version of Robin. But it's more of this emotional sort of story, this relationship with him and Batman. And it was really fun to do. I had never, for all the comics I've written, I've never really written a lot of Batman before this. So
really?
It was, maybe here and there a little bit, but never really. So that was cool to kind of do that once, for sure. Yeah,
nice. And so, what I really love about this series, and I know this is one moment I just really love. I think it was in issue 2, but it blew up on Twitter. I saw where Robin meets kind of the Teen Titans, the younger members, and then he comes home and Batman goes, so what did you, and then he lists off the ways to beat each member. And it's like, that's just the most Batman thing ever, to have Robin actually, learn how to do something like that. So I also like getting to explore that dynamic between Batman and Robin, because it's always this interesting thing that's been explored in quite a few, different parts of media. But I love that this was a comic that really focused on it, and you can kind of see that dynamic, how they react to each other. So it was like for you getting to write that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun. They're really, these iconic characters can be really fun to write, and try to find a new little angle into them when so much has been written about them in the past. For this one, it was really to keep the perspective always from Robin. So Batman's there, but we never really get his perspective on it. It's all through this boy's eyes, and Batman doesn't come across all that great in the story. He's kind of a dick. So it was kind of fun to write him as a dick and have Robin sort of struggling with his own grief and stuff from his parents, and this is sort of a pivotal moment where he can either fall into the darkness that Batman is and kind of emulate that, or find his own path where he's not, he's something other than Batman. He's his own person, his own hero, and that's what the story is about, is him kind of finding his own way. It's not just a copy of Batman. It's unique to him. And he's not Bruce Wayne, he's his own person. And it's sort of that journey of discovering who he really can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I recently had on Grant Morrison, and I think they described the relationship between Batman and Robin best. They said, well, the way I look at Batman and Robin is that, they're two broken people, and Batman looks at him and Batman sees something of himself in this young child. He's trying to, help him in a way, and they kind of help each other, process this type of thing. And that's how I kind of like to look. And I think that's what you can really see in your run. But I also love how you included Killer Croc as a villain. Did you always know you wanted it to be him?
Yeah, I always like him for whatever reason. He's always seemed like a really cool villain. But the thing that hooked me on him for this one was that the circus connection with Dick Grayson just too easy they're too obvious to pass up. And I'm not sure if there's been a story in the past where they've linked those two through their past in the circus or not. But I thought it seemed like a logical way to bring him into the story, and to have Croc be this sort of sympathetic character who was sort of in a freak show of the circus and sort of looked down upon. And the Flying Graysons were sort of the celebrities of the circus, and from his tank he could see see them and envy them, and now he's sort of taking his revenge on their kid. But you kind of understand why, like you feel for him, right? And
absolutely.
That's the best version of a villain, where you can kind of understand why they're doing it, and that he's hurt too, he's damaged too, much like Batman and Dick Grayson. He chooses to express that in a different way than they do. Obviously, they chose to fight against it, and he chose to sort of embrace it. But you see another side of that whole thing of how trauma and grief can shape people, through these three characters.
Yeah, and that was really weird. I went into it kind of expecting this fun action thing, but at the end, when you see that Killer Croc page, it kind of leads up to something, something big's going to happen. But for me, I kind of sat there and I was like, oh, that's kind of heartbreaking, someone who kind of was never given a chance to be anything better. And you see that, maybe this is all he thinks he is. And, a giant walking crocodile. And the fact that you can make me feel for a giant walking crocodile is just one of your feats as a writer. But yeah, everyone go pick up Robin and Batman issue 3. You can get that full series from your local comic book store. I'd highly recommend. So it's a really fun book. And we all need a little more, walking killer crocodiles in our life. I believe that was Gandhi who said that. But yeah, absolutely. And so we just touched on that really fun dynamic between Batman and Robin. Robin. And that's something that I think, you know, you can kind of see in the relationship between Gus and Jeopard. And so for anyone who doesn't know, what can you tell us about Sweet Tooth? It's just a little known book. Not many people, I'm sure, read it. It definitely isn't some huge Netflix TV show right now. What can you tell us about Sweet Tooth?
Yeah, I mean, Sweet Tooth is, where do I start? I mean, I started working on Sweet Tooth in probably 2008, 2009. So quite a while ago, you know, and I thought before that, I had really only done indie comics that were kind of slice of life, more grounded books, you know, and I always loved science fiction and horror and all the stuff I've gone on to write since. But at the time, I hadn't really done my own version of a genre story like that. And I loved the post-apocalyptic stories. And I came up with this idea of these half human, half animal hybrid children, this post-apocalyptic kind of fairy tale. And yeah, so I started drawing and writing Sweet Tooth at Vertigo in 2009. And when I think we did 40 issues of that, so it was probably 3 or 4 years of my life drawing that book, you know. And it's you know, another labor of love. It's the longest project I ever did. And and then yeah, who would have thought a decade later that it would be what it is now, this big Netflix series and everything, you know. Kind of surreal and cool.
Can you even believe it yet? Like, has it settled in? Like, you're like, yeah, Sweet Tooth TV show, or is it still like, oh, Sweet Tooth? Because I know you got to visit the set. So is that the moment to set in? Or like,
yeah, that was really weird and surreal. I was all before the pandemic too. So
yeah,
they shot the pilot in spring of 2019. So it was about a year
really?
before the pandemic kind of really hit. And so I got to go to New Zealand on the set and everything. And that's, yeah, I mean, obviously that's when it becomes real. It's not just an abstract thing where you're walking around and you're seeing your characters walking around and stuff. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool experience, but it's still kind of weird and surreal. And it feels like this big separate thing that I can't fully get my head around, to be honest. You know, it's, I mean, it's great for me. The more people that it brings to the book, that's the win for me. So I'm happy. And I do love the show. That's very different in tone from the book. The show, you know, it's, the book's much darker and more violent than the show. The show's a little more family friendly. But I kind of look at them almost as the inverse of each other, where you know, the book's kind of dark and violent, but the fairy tale kind of stuff kind of sneaks up on you in the background, you know. Whereas the show, the fairy tale stuff's up front and the darkness is kind of lingering in the back. They're kind of opposites in that way. And it's kind of cool that they can exist, kind of complement each other. So yeah, it's really cool, obviously. And
I can imagine.
Now, so
and I had this book when, you know, the show came out recently for Christmas. My parents were kind enough to get me volume 2, which I mean, what better thing to get for Christmas? So thanks, Mom and Dad, for this. But yeah, absolutely. And so what I love about this series is that, I don't know, like, you look at a concept like that and I think only you could do this, but I think it's one of my favorite comic books of all time because it, you know, it feels so personal. And, you know, the character, it just feels like it's such a lovely book. So is this book, you know, kind of personal to you, Sweet Tooth?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I really feel that, I think.
Yeah, well, the character of Gus was named after my own son, Gus, who was born right when I started working on it. So
does he have antlers?
He does not yet. They haven't started growing yet, but we'll see. So yeah, obviously it's a lot, put a lot of myself into the book, into everything I do. But yeah, that one especially, you know, I drew and wrote that book every day while he was growing up, and sort of seeing him sort of engage with the world and everything was a big part of what motivated the story. And yeah, so it's deeply personal, you know, for sure.
Yeah. And so, you know, we were talking about Killer Croc as a character, and this was something that I'm only really thinking about now, you know, as I chat to you. You know, the bad, I guess you could say, the villains in Sweet Tooth, I guess you could say it's, you know, Commander Abbott and Dr. Singh. But when you really look at these characters, it's like, well, yeah, they're doing bad things, kind of unforgivable things, but it's because they want to save the world in their own way. And it's like, well, they're doing something because of something that they believe in, because of something they think will make it better. And so does that make them bad people? So it's interesting for you to get to play that dynamic of just what makes a person bad, and, you know, how we deem people to be bad. Is that fun for you to get to play with?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there are not a lot of truly evil people in the world. You know, there are some, but most people who do things that we don't agree with or that we view as wrong or bad or whatever are doing it because they believe they're doing the right thing, you know, and so that has to be where you start when you create a villain, is that every good villain thinks they're doing the right thing, thinks that they're they're on the right side of it, right? So you have to be able to understand their motivations, or else they just become kind of two-dimensional, cartoony in a bad way villains, right? So yeah, I mean, we're all a product of our upbringing and our environment and everything. So there's always a reason why people do what they do, and that's the kind of stuff as a writer you try to get into and figure out, for sure.
Yeah, and so another thing I noticed in your work is the relationship between characters. I feel like that's how I define a Jeff Lemire comic. I think when you think of specific writer, you think of something they do brilliantly. And for me, it's you with just the relationships and the dynamics between characters. And like, one example, Johnny and Abbott, who are these, and they're kind of like the polar opposites of it. They're both on the same side until, of course, something changes. But Johnny kind of, sees this as maybe this isn't right. And Abbott's so caught up, he believes, I'm actually going to make a difference. And you get to see that dynamic between those two characters. So I think that's something you do brilliantly. But let me ask you, what was it like getting to play with the dynamic between Gus and Jeopard? That's a really fun dynamic, I think. And you can kind of see, I guess, Gus changed Jeopard and Jeopard changed Gus over the series. So it was like getting to play with that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess different writers, different creators get ideas from different places. But for me, my ideas usually come from, they don't so much come from like a high concept or a plot thing or a theme. It usually comes with two characters that you kind of come up with and that are often opposites, and in that relationship, those central relationships you're talking about, those kind of emotional relationships between two people or three people, and often the more opposite that they are, the more tension there is and the more story you get out of it. So for Jeopard and Gus, it was really just a matter of taking complete opposites. Jeopard's this very violent, hard person who's been beaten down by life and kind of given up on hope and on his humanity when we meet him, and Gus is very much the opposite. He's all innocence and all hope and all childhood, embodied. And when you put those two characters together, it's story, right? So and then you're right, over the course of the series
they both kind of change.
Yeah, just enough, it reawakens Jeopard's humanity enough that he can become who he needs to be, and it hardens Gus just enough that he can survive, right? So and that was the central, it's very simple, but that's the central kind of pillar of that whole series. And you always, so then whatever you come up with, whatever plot stuff, whatever story ideas you come up with, you just have to always make sure that they're reflecting that or coming back to that in some way. And then that's kind of your true north as you're writing a book, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just like all of that. And like, I love how Gus and, Jeff do change each other. You see that throughout the book. Like, I think if we first met Jeopard at the start of the book, he would never try and save Gus. He'd throw him in, he wouldn't even think about it. But Gus, of course, changes him. And then Gus in like volume 2, he's more, okay, I know what I have to do. This world is black and white. He's kind of, teaching Bobby and, these characters, it works like this. And so that's what I really love. And so, it brings me to another question. Why is Bobby the greatest character you've ever created?
It's a good question. People really love that character. So, I used to get threats that if I killed him, people were going to be really upset. Yeah, I don't know where Bobby came. Bobby came from. So when I first started doing Sweet Tooth, my editor at Vertigo was Bob Schreck, and Bob
really
had the same birthday as my son, and they're both born on in February on Groundhog's Day. So I created this groundhog character named Bobby as sort of an homage to Bob Schreck, my editor, and that's where it came from. Yeah,
lovely. I'm excited. I think Bobby, he's such a good character. And so is there a specific moment from Sweet Tooth you'd like to see put onto the TV show? Because we are getting a season 2, but is there any specific moments or any just characters you'd like to see put into the show?
Yeah, but I can't talk too freely about it because I know what's happening in season 2 and 3 now. So and I'm very much not allowed to say anything yet. So yeah, but yeah, there'll be some really cool stuff from the books that are going to start weaving itself in a really cool way. Yeah.
And so I guess this is just kind of a writing question in general, but like you look at Sweet Tooth, and I love how you even see this in the TV show, but it's like you follow a straightforward premise, but then everything is thrown in and you're introduced to new characters, and it all seems so interwoven and like such a good, and it all kind of ties together in such a great way. Like you meet new characters, new tribes, and yet it all seems to serve the bigger purpose of the story. So is it important for you to kind of keep your stories fresh and kind of throw in all these new concepts at different times?
Yeah, well, I mean, Sweet Tooth was the first time I had ever done an ongoing story like that. Before that, I'd only done more self-contained graphic novels where I had a beginning and a middle and an end, and I just told the story, right? And this was the first time where month after month, you had to generate more story and more plot, so it was a real learning experience for me that I would obviously later bring into all the other stuff I did. But it was also really fun, because it was a real opportunity for me to kind of go crazy and do all this stuff in the science fiction sort of post-apocalyptic genre that I always wanted to do. And
Nice.
and then, like I said earlier, as long as you keep it tied to that core sort of emotional, through line that I was playing with, it all kind of worked. So yeah, I mean, there were ideas I threw out that it never made it, but it was fun to kind of, okay, well, what can happen next? How do I not repeat myself? How do I take the next step with these characters without just doing the same story over and over each month, and that's fun stuff to do, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. And so, like we said, how personal this book is. Coming off Sweet Tooth, let me just ask in general. I asked this for my guest, but what do you think is the Jeff Lemire comic? If you choose any comic, what's like, yeah, that's the Jeff Lemire comic. For Grant, it was The Filth. For Matt Fraction, it was, I think, Casanova. What's it for you?
Yeah, I mean, it probably comes back to either Essex County or Sweet Tooth. Those are the two.
Yeah.
The most
Essex County, I can certainly see that, because that's based on, like, that's kind of in some senses autobiographical. Am I correct in saying so?
Sort of. It's based on the place I grew up in and the people I grew up around, but the story itself is pretty fictional. But yeah, so I mean, those two books are kind of the two that everyone kind of comes back to, and I always come back to. All the themes and everything I continue to play with were all kind of established in those two books, so they're kind of the touchstones still, for sure.
And so Essex County, was that one of your first comic book works?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'd spent a few years working on some projects that I never published, just sort of trying to learn how to make comics, and then I did one graphic novel that I self-published before Essex that was called Lost Dogs, which was it wasn't the best thing in the world, but it was sort of a step towards doing some good stuff. And so Essex was really the first one where I think I found my voice, is the kind of stories I wanted to tell and the way I wanted to tell them, for sure.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so that was published in 2006. So that was kind of it was.
Can you even look back at some of your earliest work, or is it too hard for you? Like, can you look back at Essex County, or do you?
No, I don't look back at that stuff.
No, not at all.
It's too hard. Yeah, I mean, Essex, I've had to look back on it a little because I'm working on the TV show, and I have been for a few years now. So I've kind of had to look back at that one, but in general, I don't really. Once I'm done something, it goes on a shelf, and I never really look at it again. I'm on to the next thing, moving forward. So yeah, I find it really hard to look at or read any of my own stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, you just brought up another point I want to get into. Now, one of the last comics I want to touch on, because I know you have to go soon, is Black Hammer. So I want to ask you, will this at all be, because this is one of my favorite of your comic books, one of my favorite comic books of all time. Will this at all be affected by your Image deal, or?
Yeah, that's a common question I've been getting. So the thing is with Black Hammer is I was already winding it down. We're doing a series right now called Black Hammer Reborn, which is 12 issues.
Is Malachi Ward on art on that?
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, he sure is. And then after that, there's a 6-issue miniseries called Black Hammer: The End, which I've already written, and that is the end. That's the final Black Hammer story. So that was all coming.
Kind of spin-offs in the Black Hammer universe. No,
not in the immediate future. I need to take a break. I mean, I've been doing that book since 2014, and I've done a lot of comics in the world, and I feel like I needed to take a break. So I'm sure one day I'm going to come back to the universe, but I'm going to take a few years off anyway and focus on other stories just to refresh myself and come up with some new ideas. So it was already kind of ending anyway, and I've written the whole thing. So the Image deal won't affect it. The books will still come out through the rest of this year and next through Dark Horse. And then that'll be sort of we'll take a break on Black Hammer for a couple of years probably before I do anything else. Nice.
And so is Black Hammer kind of your idea of what superhero should be? Because it kind of feels like that on the page.
I don't know if it's what I think they should be, but it's more it's like, if I could do superheroes all by myself without any editorial interference or having to worry about a bigger continuity other than the one I create myself, this is what I would do, And I'm not saying this is the only way superheroes should be done or anything, but it's definitely my very personal take on the superhero genre, and just me kind of writing a love letter to all the superhero comics I love so much growing up and even now, I'm really lucky that I got to do what I did with that, because it started off as a much smaller story, just the
Oh
original
yeah.
series, and the success of that opened up all these doors for all the spin-offs and all the world building that we've done. And I never really expected to get to do that, but it's been just incredible fun, obviously, to do it and sort of tell any kind of superhero story I had the slightest inkling to tell. I could just come up with my own thing and do it, and it's been a blast.
Yeah, and what if you write like a superhero comic about groundhog? And we could call him be something. I don't know. I don't have the ideas. Don't look at me. But I think that'd be really great. And I'd love to see you work on a character like that. So yeah, you can do something with Image at that. I'm sure that's basically how comics work. I just give you an idea and it comes back to me in a week and with a full comic. But yeah, Black
Yep.
Hammer. I love how there's kind of been spin-offs with each other. Like Colonel Weird got his own series, which is brilliant. But who's your favorite character for Black Hammer universe? And maybe who's one you'd like maybe to return to in the future and work on more, or are you kind of happy with that? But yeah, who is your favorite character in the Black Hammer universe?
Colonel Weird is my favorite.
Yes.
He's the most fun to write, for sure.
Yeah,
He's
so
a blast.
cool.
Right from the beginning, he was just a blast to write, and I love writing him. He's going to have a really huge role in these last couple series. And then in terms of who I'm going to come back to, like I said, I want to take a break, but there's definitely a big Golden Gale story that I have that I want to do. I just need a little time to write it, and like I said, I want to let things sit for a bit after this last series, but I think I'll come back to her at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what hadn't there recently been a Barbalian comic series issues?
Yeah. My friend Tate Bromble, who's a really talented young writer that I've sort of been mentoring. He came in and wrote that and did an incredible job. And now he's gone on to work with James Tynan, and he's doing a lot of cool stuff. He just wrote House of Slaughter, the spinoff to Something is Killing the Children, and he's sort of a rising star. So it was cool. He came in, and it was cool. It's cool that I could create this universe of characters and then have some other writers come in and put their stamp on them. It felt like a real superhero universe when that started happening. So that was cool.
Yeah, not half bad. And so do you have any, Black Hammer books that people can pick up coming out in the next while or so?
Yeah, well, we have Black Hammer Reborn, which is ongoing right now. It's going to be 12 issues. I'm not sure what issues coming out right now. We're on like 6 or 7, I think. And then Black Hammer The End will be coming in early next year.
Oh, nice. And so coming off that, one of the last things I want to touch on before we wrap up, is comic book adaptations. And so I know we're going to get loads more of your work. So what comic book adaptations can you currently talk about of your works that are actually in work right now? Are there any comic book series that are going to be adapted to TV soon that you can talk about?
I mean, this stuff, there's a lot of things that are in development, but that can mean anything, I probably have like a dozen of my books in development at various stages, but how many of them will actually make it to the screen, who knows? Sweet Tooth took 5 years to get that on screen, and I've been working on the Essex County adaptation for 5 years now as well. So it takes a long time, but yeah, I mean, Family Tree, Gideon Falls, Black Hammer, Snow Angels, they're all optioned in various stages. So who knows, right? I don't know which one's the closest at this point. It's hard to say because stuff changes really fast. But yeah, honestly, it's kind of cool, but I don't think about it too much because it does take so long for these things to happen that if you sat around waiting for it, you'd kind of go crazy. So I just move on and do the comics. And if something happens, that's great. If not, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think you can always have the comic, even if the TV show. I mean, I'm sure if all your comic adaptations from now, knock on wood, will be brilliant. But I think even if you can always just have the comics, and there's always that thing you can return to. But absolutely. So, is there any of your works? Maybe you can't actually answer this question, but any of your works you'd like to see adapted? Is that a question you can answer?
I don't know. I don't. For me, it's all about the comic, So that's where I put my vision and my passion into, and I don't really think beyond that. So, I mean, certainly a really cool adaptation of Black Hammer, I think could be great if done well. And same
Black
with
Hammer
Gideon
Universe, even you could have so much.
And I think Gideon Falls could be a brilliant show if it's done, but it have to be done right, So it'd be cool to see that stuff. But again, if it doesn't happen, I'm very happy with just the comics being out in the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you, we've been, talking a lot just about genres in general. Is there any genre you'd like to tackle that you haven't done much work on that you'd like to tackle in the future?
I mean, I've kind of done a lot of sci-fi, a lot of horror, and a lot of superheroes. So those are the big ones in comics, really. But I haven't really done a crime story
Oh
yet,
no. Oh yeah.
So that's something I've been thinking about. I just got to find the right story and the right way into
Yeah.
it that feels unique to me, so where I'm not just copying things that I like, I mean, Brubaker and Sean Phillips, they do such incredible stuff in that genre, and I'm a huge fan of it. And I would like to find something that is my personal take on that genre would be cool. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of fishing around for that right now.
Definitely. And so, I have an idea for you. What if there's a universe full of groundhogs called Bobby,
Yeah,
and one of them goes missing, and then that's the
yeah.
crime comic you have there? What do you think? You're gonna take. You can have that idea.
Thanks. I might pass on that.
It's always the comic book writers who don't know a good idea when they see one. So
Yeah.
typical, so typical. But yeah, one of my last questions before we wrap up, because I know we're almost reaching your time, is how much of comics is influenced by your personal life? Because after interviewing Grant kind of changed the way I look at comics, because so much comics is like just experiences that you've seen, maybe TV shows you've watched. So how much of your personal life is put into your comics? Just how many things have affected you that are put into comics?
I mean, all of it comes from my
Oh yeah.
personal, I don't know how else to do that. Yeah, everything comes from something I'm experiencing or struggling with or whatever. And then sometimes it's more straightforward where it's a little more autobiographical, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's veiled behind different levels of genre and plot and things. But yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to put as much of myself into everything I do as I can, because I think that's the only way to do honest work and good work. So
Yeah, and so one of my last questions, we were just touching on Sweet Tooth. If you could be a hybrid of any animal, what animal would you choose?
I've gotten that one before. I think I've given different answers,
You've actually
but
gotten that one before. I thought that was such an original question. Damn you.
sorry. Yeah.
Fine,
Well, I am wearing the Sweet Tooth cosplay today. I don't know if you noticed that.
I was kind of thinking this is exactly what I expected Jeff Lemire to
Yeah, I
wear.
had to be on brand for this. So
But I kind of thought if I brought it up, I'd sound so weird if I went, "You're wearing, something that I thought exactly you'd wear." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." But yeah,
I wear this every day. So
perfect.
yeah, I don't know. It would be cool to fly. So maybe some kind of a bird.
I was gonna say half pigeon just so you could poop on people.
Half pigeon. I
Just
love
so you
it.
could poop on people. Like I don't even care about flying. That's fine. But like you
Okay.
can poo on people while you're going by. That's literally the dream power.
Yeah, that's not really my thing, but hey, whatever knocks you out, man.
Yay! So yeah, that's endorsement from Jeff Lemire to go poop on people. Not exactly how I thought this interview would go, but we'll take our victories where we can get them. Yeah, so one of my last questions: do you notice improvement as a writer? Like you look back from your early work and you find, maybe even as an artist as well, that you're constantly finding new ways to work and finding out new techniques.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a little of both, because sometimes when you're starting out, everything's new, so you can try all this stuff for the first time, and sometimes you get amazing results that you then later try to replicate. And then in the same time, experience and trial and error and making mistakes and stuff, you learn a lot, so you can bring new things to work now that I couldn't then. So a bit of both, but it's all a journey, of creating stuff and sort of trying to get better, um, and really that's what it's all about, is the joy of that sort of creative process, even more than the
Yeah.
finished product themselves. So
Yeah, and so is it difficult for you to decide in your books whether I should write or draw this? And so do you take, because I know you did a brilliant book with Scott Snyder, who will hopefully be, who I think is going to be on the channel soon, called After Death, and you were just the artist on that. Oh, would I be correct in saying so? So do you kind of sometimes say, "Oh, I'd love to just be an artist in this book," or "I'd love to be a writer"? And do they both you kind of creatively fulfill you in different ways?
they definitely do. I mean, I don't think I'll ever draw something someone else has written again. I
Yeah.
think that was like a really cool thing to try, but it's not really my thing. The stuff I draw, I kind of, the writing and the drawing are kind of part of the same process for me. So it's
Yeah.
hard to separate that. Uh, but in terms of which stuff I draw myself and write myself, and which stuff I tend to come up with ideas for specific artists. So, if I know I'm working with Andrea or Dustin or whoever,
Yeah.
I'll know who I'm working with before I come up with an idea. And I'm kind of searching for ideas that suit them, so, and just like I'm looking for ideas that suit me as an artist when I know I want to draw something new. So it's never really a thing where I have an idea and then I have to figure out who's going to draw it, or, it's always kind of,
Yeah.
I always come up with it with either myself or an artist in mind. So.
Yeah, and absolutely. One of my last questions: what is it about comics that you love as a concept? What is it about comics that just appeals to you as a fan, or as a writer, or as an artist?
I mean, a lot of things, but I guess it boils down to the immediacy of it. I can sit down at my desk here and write and draw a story, and a few months later, it can be out into the world exactly how I imagined
Yeah.
it, without a lot of people in between me and the reader. And there's not a lot of storytelling mediums where that's true. Film and TV especially, they're just massive undertakings with all kinds of people involved and lots of money and lots of things that get in the way of the vision of the creator. And in comics, there's a little bit of that here and there, but you can navigate it, and you can really communicate directly to a reader in a way that you can't really do in a lot of other storytelling mediums. So, I mean, that's, I think, the big thing that keeps me coming back, where I can just I can get an idea, execute it the way I want it, and put it out into the world. And I mean, that's kind of the greatest thing to be able to do, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, I think I just want to like talk about like compliment you as right, because before reading, your work, like comics never really like emotionally cut me. But after reading like something like Sentient, like these characters feel personal, it all feels real. And like there's that soul crushing moment, in volume 2 where Jeopard, oh, don't worry, spoil it. Let's say he almost kind of lets some goat person kind of thing almost kind of die, except it doesn't, and it's something like that. You know what I'm saying? It was something from that. I put it so perfectly, I couldn't have actually put it better. But it's these moments like that. And like when I look at Sweet Tooth first, I just look at it as like the relationship between, I guess, father and son and stuff like that, and just these really, interesting dynamics. So it's important for your books, I don't know, to get to just like feel personal to the people reading them, or you just want them to know where it came from as you as writer.
Well, I mean, I think if you're going to put something out into the world, you want people to feel something. You want it
Yeah.
to affect people. And so for me, I try to put as much emotion into the books as I can. And if I'm not feeling it, the characters aren't going to feel it on the page.
Yeah.
So, and I just think if you can be true to that, and be honest with the work, and try to just communicate whatever it is you're feeling that day as best you can when you're creating, people will react to it. And so far it's worked for me. And yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like, like I said, if you're going to put something out into the world, I want to affect people, and I want to make them feel things. And that's the kind of work I like. So
Absolutely. And my last and final question: if anyone's looking to get comic books, what advice would you have for them?
oh gosh, I'm terrible at these kind of questions. I don't know what I guess my advice would just be, you know we all love stuff. We all love reading different things and love different writers and artists and things, but don't try to emulate someone else. Try to find the stories that
Yeah.
only you can tell the way only you can tell them, and do those, and be honest with it. And if you do that, chances are someone will like it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we could wrap up on a better note. Jeff, before we finish up, you on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, anything like that?
kind of on all those things. You can just Google my name, you'll find me on those things. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any new books you'd like to talk about, promote? I'll probably have to do it for you. I'm sure you've forgotten all of them.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we've kind of hit all the ones that are coming out right now. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone can go pick up Primordial from your local comic book store. So typically used to make me promote this. Snow Angels comes out soon in trade paperback form. Go pick up all of Jeff's new image work, which will be coming out soon. Mazebook you can get from your local comic book store. Batman and Robin issue 3, The End. And go pick up any Jeff Lemire comic you can find, especially if Bobby's in it. That's just kind of like added enthusiasm. But yeah, Jeff, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. I'll talk to you a little bit off air. Everyone, please make sure to like and subscribe. You can go follow me over on Twitter at SamboGizmo1. And yeah, if you have the means, as always, please make sure to donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. That is, if you have the means, every cent helps, but that'd be much appreciated. But yeah, please go check that out. Link in the description. But yeah, everyone go check out Jeff's work. And Jeff, I assume you're going to pass on my email to Todd McFarlane after this. I assume that's just how comics work now. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on in the next video. Jeff, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. But yeah, everyone, I'll see you on in the next video. Stay safe and bye.